Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the DD Politics live stream. If you are joining us on YouTube, welcome back. We are somehow back on YouTube, and with no better guest than one of my favorite guests, my mentor, definitely someone I admire, and someone who should be an inspiration to all of us right now, Marwa, calling in from Lebanon. Marwa, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, and I'm so happy that you guys got your channel back. I know for sure, I'm never gonna have mine nor my shows back, and it's okay. I don't care, but it's good for you though.
We had actually just been like, yeah, that's fine. I
Mhm.
actually told the producer, I was like, I don't care about the channel, but you could try to
Mm.
appeal it. And then he
Yeah.
got it back. So here
No,
we
no,
are.
we can be found on different platforms, and even if they take us off of everything, I think the people are awakened. Alhamdulillah, thankfully.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. All right, John, how are you? I'm back on YouTube, John. Back
We're
home.
back. We're back. Yeah, no, I'm doing good. We're a couple of weeks away from Halloween here in the United States. Spooky season. The demons are definitely out.
Yeah, they definitely are out of the United States. We'll talk about them
I,
today.
I can't even tell the difference, I think, between Halloween and U.S. political discourse at this point. It's like kind of the same. Just ghouls everywhere. But we're going to get into all of that.
Marwa, I kind of, without getting, I don't want to like drag you all back into through the horrible probably memories, but can you walk us through kind of what it's been for the Lebanese people going through? We haven't seen you since prior to the pager terrorist attack.
Yeah.
So could you kind of walk us through what that series, because it was like bam, 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 bam,
Mhm.
all back to back. It was quite traumatic. A lot of almost shock and awe, but not from the air really until they bombed from the air.
Yeah, it was something unprecedented. I don't think anyone could have ever imagined this level of evil that can come from an entity like Zionist Israel. I mean, we've been watching them over the past year being genocidal, but specifically going into people's pagers, like for example, it literally is equal going to your smartphones and rigging them with explosive devices and waiting for the right moment just to do that at a national level in Lebanon. 5,000 pagers were exploding at the same second on September 17. That's something you've never seen before. And I'm sure that you're going to be seeing if the people keep trusting those manufacturers who have completely betrayed the trust of the end user, where now you don't know who you're buying your tech from and whether you're going to be attacked at some point or not. And this is really very dangerous. And we lived it right here firsthand. It was absolutely horrible. It was as horrible as you guys watched it on live streams and on YouTube channels and whatnot, from grocery stores and hospitals and on the street and in funeral processions. It was definitely something to basically just make you think about what might be coming next. And then the second day was the walkie-talkie attacks. Hopefully, people were smart enough to just disengage their walkie-talkies or throw them away. Just it wasn't as severe as the attack on September 17, the walkie-talkies on September 18, but it still took some lives and injured scores of people. And it was then found that it was the batteries that were rigged with the explosives. So it was rigged in the manufacturing facility and not something that has to do with infiltration within Hezbollah. No, it was at the level of the manufacturer. So it was the problem of the person who actually made the order. And also, you can't really put him at default, because these explosives and these these batteries in specific could pass in airport security. It's that dangerous. It means that you can be holding that weapon with you and be going to a certain country, and even the security at the airport wouldn't know, you wouldn't know, and they would detonate it at the exact time and place that they want it. This is Zionist Israel doing it, and you have people in the West applauding it and calling it a genius act of ingenuity and something that they are proud of. That's I mean, that's disgusting behavior. We're not going to talk about that. But after that, on September 20, you had the assassination of the Rudwan forces, the complete leadership of the Rudwan infantry forces of the Hezbollah, which are the elite forces of Hezbollah. You had the commander, Ibrahim Aqil, and then you had 13 other field commanders who were assassinated while being in a civilian meeting in a residential area. They took down 2 residential apartment buildings, totaling 40 apartments, and with the death toll topping at 62 civilians murdered by Zionist Israel and more than 120 injured. During that specific day, I was still at home, and I live in Dahi and Beirut suburbs, which is being decimated at the moment by Zionist Israel. So we were just 450 or 500 meters away from the building that was targeted. So you can imagine what we lived through, because it's something that we've never lived through before. I've been through the 1996 war and the 2006 war, and I've never heard something like this or felt something like this. It was literally an earthquake, but in a different dimension. It was usually an earthquake you shake from side to side. Here we were shaking up and down, and we were hearing certain voices that we didn't, or sounds that we didn't recognize that we have heard before. We thought there was some sort of an accident that might have affected the foundation of the apartment building that we are at, but it was until we got the breaking news on our mobile phones that we realized this was an Israeli entity attack. It was that severe. So we actually, on that specific day, we remained home, and then due to the constant, I'm not going to say annoying behavior that you get from your parents and your loved ones. I'm going to say their concern. But it was too annoying to a point that I was like, khalas, I'll just pack and leave. Okay, I'm leaving. But I did not want to leave my house, and I stayed there up until the day before, 2 days before the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. So we left on the 25th of September. During that time, when Zionist Israel began the bombardment, the wave of bombardment and airstrikes against the southern part of Lebanon and the Beqa Valley, within less than 24 hours, Sarah, you can't imagine, there were more than 700 people killed, all civilians, women, children, complete families obliterated. Same thing, same doctrine that we saw in Gaza of the past year, we were seeing again in Lebanon and Beqa. But what's different in our region is that sometimes you would have family members, for example, John, let's say he's living in New York, he'd have family members living in California or in Idaho or whatnot. No, we live near one another. And if something happens, we go and stay, all of us, with one another. There's some sort of a joke going on that we can survive this war, but we don't think that we can survive living with relatives. It's some sort like an inside joke that it's being, people are still trying to find something to make them laugh, that living together in extended family, I mean, you can imagine going to a wedding gets you a lot of drama, going to a funeral gets you a lot of drama. Imagine living with people that you usually very much love and want to see, but for a long period of time, it's stressful. But to go back to the essence of it, people tend to stay with their loved ones when something like that happens in our part of the world. That's why, for example, in Gaza, you would see 60 or 70 members of the same extended family all perishing in one apartment building, because they either, to begin with, they live on top of one another in buildings, or they live near one another, and when the war struck them, they decided to stay with one another. So basically, that's what we were seeing in Beqa, families, 24 members, 32 members of the same family being killed. Just yesterday, there was in Wardani in South Lebanon. It was actually in Shuf, on the like before getting into South Lebanon, it was the Shuf area governorate of Lebanon. It was bombarded as well. And there were people who were displaced. People who were killed were actually displaced from South Lebanon. They were killed there. This morning, you had the Dirdghaya attack in the district of Tyre, where an entire building holding and housing civil defense servicemen, 9 of them were killed by Zionist Israel. They've been killing nurses, doctors, paramedics, and servicemen over the past 2 weeks, that we have surpassed 120 medics and more than 57 servicemen in the fire department. And this is what we call here civil defense. They are the fire department, the firefighters. They've killed more than 62 of them. And Furthermore, you've been seeing all sorts of attacks all across Lebanon, not only in the southern suburbs of Beirut and Bekaa and South Lebanon. No, they've targeted Kisrwan, Jbel, which are areas in the middle part of Lebanon, in the mountainous region of Lebanon. They also targeted Tripoli and other northern parts of Lebanon. So Israel is attacking everyone, and the devastation would be if they start attacking the central district of Beirut, which now houses, along with the people who are still living there, houses more than 1.2 million displaced families, like my family. We're displaced to the central part of Beirut district from the southern suburbs of Beirut, which is about between 10 to 20 kilometers away from the southern suburbs of Beirut. Depends where you are and which part of Beirut. So that's the risky part at the moment. But at the same time, while Israel was assassinating the leaderships of the resistance, the most prominent, iconic human to ever have lived in our part of the world, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, and his leaders with him, all the while, we had the people that we trust, the resistance fighters, who are usually friends, family, colleagues. This is what Hezbollah is. Don't need to explain again what Hezbollah is. We don't get like mercenaries from another country or another planet, for that matter. It's natives living here, part of the land, from South Lebanon, from Bekaa, from Beirut. They are part of the 5 to 6 million Lebanese civilians living in Lebanon at the moment. So it's like impossible that you don't know someone who's part of the Hezbollah resistance fighters, or because as well, it's impossible that you don't know anyone who works in the Hezbollah institutions, because it's a huge community. They have hospitals and schools and universities and social services, and all of that has been targeted by Zionist Israel over the past 2 weeks, actually 19 days up until today. So it has been horrific at the humanitarian sense, but at the level of the morale of the people and their trust in the resistance, and at the level of the resistance members themselves, who, when you read Western mainstream media or Zionist media, they tell you that Khalas, Hezbollah is gone. It's been eliminated. All the leaders are gone, so Hezbollah is no longer existing and viable and capable of maybe supporting Gaza, or what they call being a threat against an existential threat against the Zionist Israeli settler community. That's not the case. That's a big lie. And all the wave of bombardment that you saw, they didn't take out the capability of the resistance, with the evidence that every day we have between 200 to 350 rockets that are being launched from Lebanon in defense of Lebanon and in support of Gaza as well. We've seen also ballistic missiles being fired after Zionist Israel supposedly allegedly took out they say it's 60 to 70% of the military capabilities of Hezbollah in Lebanon. How's that possible when we were seeing Fadi 1, Fadi 2, and Qadr ballistic missiles reach all the way to Tel Aviv and Haifa? And now, over the past 3 days, especially after the second statement that was issued by the Deputy Secretary General of Hezbollah, Sheikh Naim Qasim, when he had that speech in commemoration of October 7th, Al-Aqsa flood operation, and he was also telling the people that there are no more vacant positions in Hezbollah leadership except for the Secretary General position, which we all anticipate that it will not be filled until the end of the war, until victory is attained by the resistance. Or else, if they want to do it, I don't think that they are going to announce it at the moment, because it would be dangerous for them. So since that day in specific, so since October 8th, up until today, we have seen a different level and a new level, an upgraded level of defense by the resistance, whether by stopping and thwarting the Israeli enemy from invading South Lebanon on multiple fronts. You know that video that you saw of Israelis erecting that flag and taking down Soleimani's statue from the park, the public park of Marun al-Ras. Marun al-Ras is 600 meters away from Avivim settlement. And it's literally like, it's like if you take a Range Rover, you could drive in 20 seconds and get there, put the flag and come back. I mean, Hezbollah can put flags all over the border. What does that mean? Did they invade, occupy Palestine? Obviously not. So it's just, it's such a show. You need to be there and know what Marun al-Ras is, that village, and where the houses are actually situated. Literally, the nearest house to the park is about 1.5 kilometers away. They did not even stay after destroying the park, because they would have been sitting ducks for the Cornet missiles of the Islamic resistance. Now, also on the other side of the border, which the border that I'm talking about is the middle side of the border. Then you have Khiyam, Marjayoun, my village, that's the eastern part of the border. And then you have the western part of the border, which over the past 2 days in the state of Naqoura, it has been lit by attempted invasions into South Lebanon from that areas, and the thwarting of the resistance factions in that specific area. This morning, I was watching a video on Al Mayadeen channel where the Zionist entity was attempting to infiltrate in both in the Labuna area and the Naqoura area, and they were turned into dust. Their kavas were burning, like it's in a scene that brought us back to the 2006 cemetery, Merkava cemetery, in both in the valley of Hujair and in the Marjayoun al-Khiyam valley as well. Because even then, Zionist Israel tried to infiltrate, and then Merkava was lit with Cornet. But now we're talking about Cornet that has been developed, that has been the know-how of it and the warhead of it has been developed and made much more effective towards creating immobility in the Merkava itself and in trying to thwart any attempts at invasions. So at the moment, what we are seeing is a new level of fight that is coming from the resistance, but at the same time, the thermal bombs that are being used by Zionist Israel, which by all accounts are internationally banned and illegal, they are being used on my people, on our city, on Beirut, to a point that you can no longer find any evidence of an apartment building that is 12 or 13 stories high, which is double. Our apartment buildings are always double in Dahiya, meaning each floor has 2 apartments. There's no evidence. Like, you go and if you want to see, look at the evidence of where once stood an apartment building, you only find a 9-meter or 12-meter crater. Nothing. Like, everything is evaporating. So you can imagine the chemicals that are that have been dropped and are being dropped on my people and my capital, Beirut. And if we survive this war, you can imagine that we might not survive after the war because of all these chemicals that we are inhaling from these internationally banned weapons by Zionist Israel. Added to that, the white phosphorus that they have been using against the Biqa and the southern part of Lebanon. Khiyam Valley has been completely burnt out by the Zionist Israelis with white phosphorus, also internationally banned weaponry. And all of this weaponry is made by the United States of America, being given for free to the Zionist entity, paid by you guys, taxpayers in the USA, to kill my people while you voice your discontent and disapproval. But they continue with this genocide in Gaza, and it's spilling over into Lebanon. But the difference is, in Lebanon, the resistance has much more capabilities than what Gaza has, and it has depth in reaching the internal occupied territories of Palestine, which can actually be a level of deterrence, and which could allow for a maneuvering for the resistance to fast track a possible ceasefire with the Zionist entity. But that can only happen if more voices in the West, which we are hearing, by the way, the same way we heard France the other day. I don't really like Macron, but he was saying, I mean, if Macron is saying it, then it's like, that's it. That's the level that they have reached. Today, I was listening to the Italian officials who said that not only that this is unacceptable and it needs to end, also Zionist Israel is targeting UN peacekeeping missions in South Lebanon and using them as human shields, and that's not acceptable. And I was also listening to the deputy of the Belgian president, and she was also saying that what's happening is not only unacceptable, it needs to stop, and Israel needs to be put on sanctions. These are officials in Europe that we are hearing for the first time being that vocal against the Zionist regime. And I think the only way out of this would be by continuation from the resistance, both from Gaza and South Lebanon, and by either taking out Netanyahu from the leadership of the regime, or taking out Netanyahu from life itself.
So I did want to ask you a question. 2 days ago, or it might have been yesterday, but Israel actually announced that Lebanon was effectively under a naval blockade. They also have been bombing the airport I do know that Syria or Lebanese people have been able to get to Syria and other parts, but are they going? Do you believe that they're going to put Lebanon under a siege again?
They did not bomb the airport. They bombed around the airport because we still have flights going in and out of Lebanon. They did not put a naval blockade because we still have even people leaving on board of boats and ships and ferries to Cyprus and Adana and Syria, and Adana and Turkey, and Tartus in Syria, and Cyprus as well, because, or not Cyprus, Cyprus. They're getting to I don't know, what is it called? I don't want to say the wrong name, but they're getting there. And the people that are getting there are usually people who either have passports like European, American, or any other passport, or that have visas or residencies in those areas. So it's all legal. Yani what we are seeing in Lebanon is not people fleeing in boats the same way, for example, that we saw what was happening during the global war against Syria, or people would just put themselves on boats. And no, this is actually monitored by the Lebanese government, and it's monitored by international aviation and international maritime as well. And it is all legal, and all the people that are reaching Cyprus, that are getting on flights and leaving to their final destinations. So we're not seeing the thing that you might hear on media that people are fleeing Lebanon with. No. The people who are trying to leave Lebanon are people who couldn't find a place to stay, either in displaced centers or in rentals. And the rents, I spoke about this before, that the rents in Lebanon took a spike in a way that is unacceptable, illegal, inhumane, and the government did nothing about it because, hello, Lebanon has a puppet government. This is not new. But it is beyond the people's capability to rent a proper house as a safe house for their families. The prices have gone up to at least $1,500 or $2,000 per month, and that is a huge number in Lebanon, especially after the financial crisis that hit us in 2019, where the minimum wages dropped from $800 or $900, they dropped to like $200. So you can imagine how expensive that is. So people are choosing to go to Syria because Syria is still very inexpensive compared to Lebanon, and because Syria and Iraq are actually providing the Lebanese displaced and refugees with free housing. That's how close we are with our neighbors, except for the Zionist entity. So they're providing people either with hotels free of charge or free housing. Because number one, the number of Lebanese people who crossed over to Syria is not that much compared, for example, to the number of Syrians who went back to their country. More than 360,000 Syrian refugees who found refuge in Lebanon during the global war in Syria actually returned to their hometowns, and safely. You don't see that in the Western media, by the way. They're not talking about this. They're not telling you that it was safe actually for them to return, which is why there's no reason for the sanction or the war on Syria to continue. But that's another topic. But the number of Syrians who crossed over is much higher than the number of the Lebanese people who crossed over. There are official numbers that are being presented on a weekly basis by the Lebanese government. And the last was today, actually. You can find the numbers. I can send it to you later if you're interested. And they published it, saying that the highest number of displaced are actually in Beirut, and that Beirut is now holding, added to its original residents, 1 million new residents, either in houses where families together or with people renting. And Beirut is a very big city, and it has a lot of empty spaces. And that was a big issue to discuss at a national level, because Solidaire district in downtown Beirut is an empty ghost town. And it was actually built upon areas and like houses and shops that were stolen from the people back in the 90s after the civil war. People had complete lives there, and they told them, just get out, we're gonna rehabilitate the neighborhood and you can come back. They didn't allow them to come back. They then said, we'll pay you back. They never paid them that back. So it's stolen land given to private companies. And because it's very expensive, and actually people are angry with the way that the rogue members of the government dealt with it, no one rented shops there. No one goes there. No one buys a house there. It's because it's crazy expensive, and no one rents there. You can only see banks and like international companies that can afford. So you have a ghost town that is not inhabited, and you have people living on the streets. So there was a debate, like, just open up the buildings and the residential areas for the people to live there until the war is over. And this is a big clash between the lower class and the elite that is actually governing the country in Lebanon. So you can imagine that's another internal clash happening at the moment. But that's basically the situation. And I don't think that the Israelis are, for the time being, going to bomb the airport at the request of the United States of America, obviously not for us. They would have bombed it to oblivion like the day they started, but it's at the request of the American embassy in Beirut and American officials in the Pentagon, because they still have a lot of American citizens, either Lebanese Americans or Americans themselves, who are still leaving, because there is only the Middle East Airlines that is operating in Lebanon. All other airlines have completely stopped operating. So you can imagine, I think Middle East Airlines have only a fleet of 36 or 38 planes. So that's not enough to make all the back and forth trips to evacuate the people who need to leave. So I don't think that they're going to be bombing the airport now, but probably in a couple of weeks, maybe in a month, if this continues. I don't know, but I don't know if they're going to be able to continue, given the fact that every day between 200 and 300 rockets are now, over the past 3 days, falling on residential areas. We kept always saying that Hezbollah is not going to bomb residents. They're not going to bomb settlers until they carpet bombed Dahiya. Killed more since October 8th, more than 2,160 civilians, and injured more than 10,000. So what is settler lives more important than our lives? No, I think that's the new equation that Hezbollah is trying to portray to Zionist Israel and the Pentagon as well, telling them that, look, you bomb us, we're going to bomb you, and we're going to reciprocate. You're going to bomb our suburban areas, we're going to bomb yours. And I think the Hupo, the Hudhud 3 that we saw yesterday evening was a threat, a direct threat, because in the Hupo you could see batteries of the Iron Dome, and you could see certain defensive air defensive facilities that were erected on top of universities in Zionist Israel, and they say that Hezbollah actually takes people as human shields when they are doing this on top of the, like, on literally the rooftops of universities. The university in Haifa, for example, you could see that on Hupo, and I did tweet about that this morning, and they also showed the most important threat that we saw in Hudhud was when they showed again the Haifa port, where the oil and gas refineries and I think the storage houses of the oil and gas are there. And you can imagine, if one missile lands there, what would happen? The same bomb that they dropped on Lebanon, the 2,000-pound bombs, that, like, one rocket can equal if it's dropped on an oil tank or an oil refinery facility or whatnot. So the threat is real, and I think the Israelis need to rethink their strategy with Lebanon, because it is not as easy as their strategy with Gaza, despite the fact that Gaza, till today, they are still fighting off the resistance, fighting off the occupation. The resistance is still viable and operating in Gaza, while we also see massacres still being happen, like in the Rafida school this morning, which took the lives of more than 32 civilians, including children and women, and the footage was just horrible. It's always like it's the first day that we're watching this in Gaza, but the resistance is still viable.
So you mentioned earlier there was a lot of difference between, because you mentioned the craters in Lebanon. We've moved from Palestine or Gaza of being kind of the whipping boy. So whenever anybody does anything, they retaliate against Gaza. Now it's Lebanon. But the interesting thing that you pointed out was the craters. There are craters in Gaza, but it's more rubble. You guys are being more vaporized, and like there's more.
But it has to do with the geography of the area. Okay. The craters that we were seeing in Rafah in specific, remember, Gaza is majorly a desert. Yeah. It has the seashore, but it's majorly a desert. So even the areas where we saw 9-meter and 12-meter craters, it was nothing but camps on soil that resembles the soil of the seashore.
Yeah.
But the Lebanese geography is, we don't have a desert in Lebanon. It's a mountainous region, and the coastal line, the suburbs of Beirut is at the end of the mountain before the actual coastal line, and it's a bit of a plain, but it is higher than Gaza. And at the same time, it's a full residential area. So, for example, at certain times in Gaza, you had Deir al-Balah, Khan Yunis, and whatnot, which are all residential areas. But you had Ramle, which had more like units, house units. Those house units in Lebanon, you only see them in the extremities. You see them in South Lebanon and the Beqa Valley. For example, like my house in Khiyam, it's a unit. It's not part of it. There are no apartment buildings in the south because it's a village area. It's a mountainous area. It's the village house. But in Beirut, it's skyscrapers and it's high apartment buildings. So that's different. But at the same time, as I told you, Sarah, it's like they never existed. I'm preparing for my show tomorrow. I was downloading a couple of videos from TikTok, from accounts that were born just 2 weeks ago, just to document the horrific aftermath of the carpet bombing of Dahieh. And there is an area which is like the area that I drive every day. I pass through it every day, and it's full of traffic, and it kills me, and it takes a lot of my time. But as I was watching it, I didn't recognize it. Wallahi, I didn't recognize it because it was wiped out, completely wiped out. It's the streets that I drive to take my kids to and get them back home from school. That's like, it's as if I'm looking at open, and Dahieh doesn't have open areas. There are no more open areas in Dahieh because it's overpopulated. So when you stand there, like I'm looking at the phone and I couldn't recognize the area. And then I just recognized one shop because it's a shop that I usually get a certain product from. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe it. But this is Israel. Shock and awe. Just scare the people. Make them see what would happen if they stick to the resistance. They did this before in 2006 and nothing happened. Did they think like, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Einstein that says if you do the same thing over and over again and expect new results, you're practically insane. It's insanity. And that's what the Zionist Israelis are doing. It's insanity. You expect us to stand against the resistance only because you are killing us and wiping out our livelihoods? That's not how we operate. They need to understand by now, but it seems that they don't. Like if you take out our leaders, then we will stop being supporters of the resistance. Like if you take out Gaza completely, we will forget that there are Palestinians and stop supporting them? Absolutely not. But they are adamant on making more enemies in the region. And if they continue to do so, a major wall will eventually be blown up in their faces. That's reality.
Well, I want to ask you about the Iran strikes, but first I was hoping that you could help us dispel this common narrative that we're seeing from the United States and Israel about Hezbollah, saying that Hezbollah are basically just an arm of Iran, they're an Iranian proxy, and that's basically all that they are. They're this kind of inorganic entity in southern Lebanon and don't really represent the people, which is another example of Israel.
I have a really
funny.
Exactly.
What's funny is that an article came out today from Reuters of all sources, and they were like, the headline was just madness. It said something along the lines of, I might even have it up. The Lebanese like won't turn on Hezbollah, and they interviewed a shop owner, and he said, we are Hezbollah here, whatever, this is in Beirut proper, whatever Hezbollah does, we will support them. We will always fly the flag of Hezbollah, even if it becomes worse here than Gaza. We will still fly the flag. My house in Dahieh was already been destroyed. I would rather my house was gone than the shoe on the foot of one Hezbollah fighter was damaged.
Israel's not going to understand that, and I completely understand where you're coming from, John, by asking this question, because a lot of people in the West don't understand. You know, it's funny for Westerners and people who don't understand what's happening to say, oh, how would a shop owner or a member of the Lebanese community say that? I mean, would you expect anything less from a Zionist settler who was kicked out of his settlement because Lebanon is trying to defend Palestinians? Would they burn their own flag, despite the fact that it's a flag of colonialism and imperialism and apartheid? They wouldn't. Why would you expect us to do that? I mean, it is insanity. Wallah. Yani you would expect us to stand against the people who are defending us? You would expect us to stand against the people who gave us liberation, who liberated our land, liberated our detainees from the Israeli demonic detention centers. You would expect us to stand against the people who put us right there on the map and allowed us to have alliances with other factions in the region where Zionist Israel and the US Army has bases all around us. Who's the terrorist here? Who is the infiltrator? Who is the imposter? Who is literally the perpetrator in this equation? This is my land. I was born here. My ancestors were born here. Why is it that we have more than 800 or 900 bases across West Asia for the United States of America? What are they doing here? What are they doing here? The nearest shore of the United States of America is 9,000 miles away from my shore here at the Mediterranean. Why should my existence here be any threat to anyone living in New Jersey? We really don't understand that. Why is it that we should accept having aircraft carriers in our sea, literally the sea that is, according to international law, our territory, our turf? Why is it okay to accept that? Why is it okay for the Pentagon to have its spokesperson say, well, Israel is just defending itself, that's why it's invading Lebanon? Are you out of your mind, woman? I was listening to her today. Are you literally, and you're an African American, shame on you. Shame on you, you say that. I mean, what do you expect from the people who are just watching their neighbors? And when I say neighbors, it's us. We come from the same land. Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, we are all one people historically. We speak the same language. We have the same religions, with an S actually, same religions in the region. And we have lived through the same history. You expect us not to stand with them? You are expected to have a NATO alliance of God knows how many countries and attack everyone, and everyone who dares say anything, kill babies, kill women, obliterate economies, put sanctions on humans, and you expect us not to retaliate? What God-given world are you living in? You want to put sanctions on us. You want to invade us. You want to besiege us like you're besieging Gaza for the past 17 years. And you want us just to say, Alhamdulillah, shukran, thank you for doing it. Are you mad? Are you mad? Like, you want to keep killing my children? You want me to watch them not going to school, being afraid of the sound of drones, listening to missiles, and then seeing the fears just jumping out of their eyes? And you want me to say, oh, please, Hezbollah, stop. I'm going to say, Hezbollah, if you stop, you're going to see another face of me. You're going to see a population that will haunt you down for the rest of your existence. We support you because you are our only option to defend our land and defend ourselves. How on earth would anyone expect us, especially when bombs are falling on our heads, to say, oh, please stop bombing us, we'll just renege on our promise to the resistance to support them? It's like reneging on the promise to our fathers and husbands and brothers and sisters. You don't renege on family. That is what Hezbollah is. It's family. And the West doesn't understand it. Let them take the lifetime to understand. Zionist Israelis are bombing Yemen, bombing Palestine, bombing Lebanon, bombing Iraq, bombing Syria. And then they say, oh, we're defending ourselves. Next thing, they're going to be bombing, I don't know, maybe Turkey and Iraq and most probably Iran. And then they're going to say, oh, we're just defending ourselves. You literally killed a man on Iranian soil, and you bloated and you flaunted your capabilities. And then you would expect Iran to tell you, okay, boy, it's fine, you did it this time. No. They are now concerned that Zionist Israel actually killed the president of Iran. After the terrorist attack of the pagers in Lebanon, there is a possibility that he might have had a pager on himself. What evidence do we have that he did not have one and he was not killed that way? I personally believe that investigations should reopen to deal with that specific case, especially after 17th of September, after the terrorist attack of pagers in Lebanon. You have this entity that would not have continued to exist had it not been for constant money and weapons coming from the West to kill us, to steal our resources and steal our land and expand while bringing people from Poland and from Africa and from Finland and God knows what parts of Europe to colonize us and say that they are inherently part of this land when they don't speak the language, they've never lived here, their ancestors never lived here, and if they wanted to live here, they could have at least tried to do it peacefully.
Well, we've seen a lot of evil in history, but this is some of the most gaslighting that I've ever seen as atrocities are being carried out. It's like whatever they point the finger at, it is usually them who are doing it 10 times worse, right? And this is the pattern that we've seen. But you mentioned the West, and I want to ask about the West because on one hand, the Biden administration publicly, they claim that we would like to see a decrease in the escalation. We want to see peace. But on the other hand, they're also saying that we want Hezbollah to be replaced politically in Lebanon. They're saying that they want a government, they're working toward a government that is more friendly to the United States and Israel. So how, in my mind, it's impossible to square these claims when you're talking about removing the force that is actively defending Lebanon, while also saying out of the other side of your mouth that you are in favor of peace. But what does this say about the United States' role and the future for democracy in Lebanon, which, I can only imagine under these types of circumstances is completely imperiled?
Can I ask a question to answer your question, John?
Yeah.
You have in November presidential elections coming up in the US, right? I'm not going to tell you, imagine the caretaker prime minister in Lebanon saying anything. Imagine the prime minister of the UK, one of the biggest allies, closest allies to the United States of America, having a press conference and telling the world that we would like to see a change in the government in the United States of America, and we would like to see Donald Trump winning the elections instead of Kamala Harris, or Kamala Harris winning the elections, or maybe Jill Stein. Come on, change it, people. Go green for once. What do you expect will happen in the United States? And please imagine with me Rachel Maddow and Tucker Carlson and the far right Fox News complete idiots. What would they do right then and there when they hear that statement coming from none other than the Prime Minister of the UK?
Well, we don't even have to imagine it, because the United States makes up these narratives that other countries have a certain interest in our outcome of our presidential election, and then they'll just use this fabricated idea that Russia wants a certain outcome, that Iran wants a certain outcome, and they'll go with these total fictions as
exactly. But you don't have officials from the Kremlin flying and landing in Washington and going to the White House and making these discussions, do you? But we have constantly people flying over from the White House, from the Pentagon, coming to the biggest complex of terrorism founded on Lebanese soil, which is the U.S. Embassy. You should watch it. Like Google search U.S. Embassy in Lebanon, Awkar, A-W-K-A-R. That's the area where the embassy is. And just look at that. If you don't for a second think that it is built on military bases and they have all sorts of weaponry and they have helipads for helicopters to land on, we have people flying into our country not using the official airport of the government, literally landing on the US Embassy. We have no idea who's landing and who's leaving. That's what we have. You think that's legal? Look at what the United States of America did 2 weeks ago. They named people who work for NGOs and TV channels as foreign agents, asking them to sign certain documents and to register and then ban them and then sanction them. And there are just literally TV channels. Like, you could do a certain deal with those channels and tell them, we'll take you off the satellite, for example. But you are going into people's lives and threatening them for just to stop them from freedom of speech. Now, imagine coming into my country and doing this and asking, oh, we want this person to be president. We want that person to be speaker upon. Who the hell are you? Who picked you to be the godfather of this country? We had an elections, we chose our parliament members, and those parliament members are supposed to elect the president. I don't like it. I want to be the person who elects the president, which is why I'm waiting for a time for the constitution to be amended where the president is actually elected by the people, and the president doesn't have to be Christian, just like the speaker doesn't have to be Shia Muslim, just like the prime minister doesn't have to be Sunni Muslim. That's ridiculous. Those traditions that are not even legalized by the Lebanese constitutions. We should just get rid of this and be Lebanese people. Choose whoever we find fitting for these positions, not for Hochstein or whatnot flying over, or the ambassador, I don't know what her name is, I'm not following up on witches who keep changing positions in Lebanon, who come and tell us what to do and what not to do and who to talk.
Uh-oh.
Whoa.
Frozen.
Yeah, we might get her back, but either way, that I had their internet. Oop. Let's see.
Yep.
Her internet might be out.
Yeah, case. But she was making great points. It to me, while we're just kind of waiting, the all of this repression that we've seen in the United States, particularly aimed at Russian media or media that's alleged to be in some type of violation of the FAIR Act. A lot of this is just kind of an indication of guilt on the part of the United States itself, because it's basically when they make these kinds of efforts to curtail certain types of media, they're basically saying, well, we know how much we engage in disinformation campaigns and media manipulation, NGOs in other countries, and how impactful this can be in shaping the political narrative. And we're not going to have any of that, right? So that's kind of what it says to me a little bit. But hopefully Marwa's.
I could see her on Telegram, so I'll message her. But I will upload it for Sunday. But I watched it this morning. There's a clip. I don't know who the reporter is from, but he asks Matt Miller about the hijab massacre, and he doesn't even know how to answer. No, you're fine, Marwa. You're fine. You're fine.
I think we lost connection. I couldn't connect. I had to go on Wi-Fi. So I think now the internet connection is going to be a bit weak. So sorry for that.
We're almost done. We're just going to let John wrap it up. I think he has like a few questions to finish up, and then we'll let you go. Thank you so much for coming back, Marwa.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll spare you any more questions about the United States, because it will just infuriate me and then probably you as well.
Kill the internet before she says
kill it. Yeah. But I wanted to, while we have you, because the time with you, it really is so precious, and we really appreciate you coming on. And I just want to get your thoughts about if there's anything that the world should know right now about what's happening in Lebanon, the spirit of resistance in Lebanon. What should that be? What is a message that you want to leave with our audience today about what's happening?
Look, I'll say we are not going to ask for international solidarity the way that the people of Gaza have rightfully asked, because we really have been through this several times, and we know that no one's going to care about us. Not because Palestinian lives mean more than Lebanese lives, no, because we have the capability to fend off terrorism. But Palestinians in Gaza are under siege, aerial, land, and sea besiegement for the past 17 years, and they have nowhere else to go. And Egypt is also part of that siege. It's also suffocating the people. But here we have a lot of friends who are helping, thankfully. We are fully capable of defending ourselves. If they choose to spill the genocide over, they're going to regret it, because we tend to have a lot of babies and then grow our population faster than they would ever imagine. And we will instill the love of resistance in the hearts and minds of our children. And if we perish, they're going to continue that same path. It's resistance until liberation. We have no other option. We don't want to have another option. And anyone in Lebanon who has an option, or tells you that he has an option or would like to see another option, could simply just either pick up his or leave, or stay until the bloodshed is over, and we as Lebanese people could sit down and talk. And I'm sure if they talk to me, I'm going to make them see my way.
And you mentioned, you're not asking anything from the international community at this time, but I am curious, what your hope is for the international resistance, just in terms of what they should be learning from what's happening in Lebanon right now.
it's important to follow, first of all, to follow trustworthy people and news channels and influencers who speak the truth. It's very important because you can be gaslit like that. You can have fake news like that. It's important to follow the real people, especially people on the ground. And in Lebanon, it's tricky. It's not like Gaza. You're going to have Zionist Lebanese people trying to like change the image or project things that Zionist Israel would want you to know. So be careful who you are listening to and who you're watching. That's number one. Number two, educate yourself by trying to read a bit about the history of the region. And I'm not being condescending here. I'm actually, this is what I tell my students, educate yourselves, because I have a problem with my students because they don't know, for example, the history of Latin America, of the Americas. And I always push them into reading so they can understand that we have the same struggles and we live under the same occupation, which is the global occupation by the empire. So reading more and learning more and listening to the right people and getting involved in debates and talking to one another, just sit and talk and let people either convince you or convince them, and always use reasoning when you do that and real numbers and facts, and look at the horrific incidents that have been happening. And if someone gaslights you into talking about October 7 and demands that you condemn a certain side, first of all, step back, take a breath, don't get involved in that, and then ask them about the 75 years that were prior to October 7 and what they know about them. And if they don't, then ask them to please not preach about what happened on Al-Aqsa flood operation if you don't know what happened before that for 75 whole years. So that's the most important thing. Don't fall into that trap. Educate yourself so you can actually elevate yourself.
Guys, join our Discord. We have an entire free library of books there. I tell them all the time, they're always fighting about Jew this, Jew that. I'm like, have you guys read a book? It would probably take you out of this argument. It would pull you right out of the Arab versus Jew argument, the Muslim versus Jew argument.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Marwa. And I really, I didn't even want to ask you, but I can't thank you enough for coming on. And
my pleasure.
But I do have good news.
For allowing me.
The Gulf states did say they will close their airspace to Israel. So baby steps. We're getting there. We're getting there.
You believe them? Oh, you're so cute.
We'll see. Marwa, I have to have hope. I have to have hope, or we don't have any.
Oh no, like they're gonna close their airspace, but they have already military bases right there. They don't need like
you can't use our bases to take off. You just use the ones you already have here. That's what
well, we'll see what happens. Well, hoping for the best. Thank you very much, guys, for having me on your platform, and thank you for keeping the dialogue and discussion alive. That's very important.
Yes, we talked to Charmaine. We're trying to make sure that we get everybody's voice is heard. It's so important. It's so important to know what's happening on the ground, because a lot of people in the West have a lot of opinions that I really don't care about. So I really wanted to get.
And by the way, since we are here, I also want to give my heartfelt emotions to the people of Florida who are being hit by this very extensive and very scary hurricane. And look, guys, even if we have animosity with your regime, we have nothing but love for you, because we are the people. We need to stick together. So I hope you guys get out of this situation, and I hope you don't lose loved ones. And if you lose materialistic stuff, don't worry about it, as long as your health is good.
And don't ever forget, I would rather have my house gone than the shoe on one foot of Hezbollah be damaged. Thank you once again, Marwa. And we will return on Sunday with Mikhail about military stuff. And I'll have a special guest co-host. Also want to tell you guys, go watch Atrocity Inc., How Israel Sells Its Destruction of Gaza. It's Max Blumenthal's new documentary. It is free. It's on the Gray Zone website, I think. So I think that's all we have for now. Guys, we have big announcements coming up soon. If you'd like to help us with those announcements, please support us on our website. We're now on Patreon as well. And we need help with paying for dog sitters. That's the big announcement. We're traveling. Thanks again, Marwa. And we will see you guys on Sunday.